Hello everyone, my name is Temirlan, and today we're going to talk about the interview, how to be more presented in front of your admission officer. And today I will start the interview from this. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, I will start then. Okay. Today we're gonna have interview tutorial with me, Temirlan Sabyrbayev, and I'm currently Duke Kunshan University student. And recently I committed. And Russell Davis, he is Director, International Student Recruitment, Duke Kunshan University. Today's session plan is first we're gonna talk about overall about the interview with universities, tips, usual problems, use of websites, and etc. And then we will have my experience, how I did the last chance, stress, and etc. And the third one is the interview from the interviewer's point of view process, what is being assessed and why, application responsibilities. And the last one, it will be question and answers with the Temirlan and Russell. Okay. Um, Overview of the interview, what is about, what interview is gonna talk about you. Of course, we will have some purpose of the interview. We have two purposes: to know more about prospective students by speaking face-to-face. Of course, every admission officer and every university should know about yourself, or should know about you more. And through an interview, we can understand students and how they can interact with other people. Typically, of course, by asking questions about their life and personal experiences. So interview can give for admission officer a lot about you and how you also uh, interact with other people. And the second one is to truly understand your motives, which led you to apply for university, and also examine your match with the university. This is one of the essential part of your application, because understanding your match with the university can give a lot for admission officer, and they can examine how you can what you can give for university, what purpose led you to apply for this university, and also know about you more than just your daily life experiences. Of course, the second one is timing. It usually interview takes more than 15 or 20 minutes, but in my experience, I had 17 minutes interview. Questions. We have two types of questions. Is common questions about students' life. Uh, for example, how would your friends describe you? Maybe how do you want to study this subject? What do you like to do in your spare time? And etc. And the second type of question is specific schools questions. Why this university? Why this major program? And so on. This can differ for specific schools, and you can find it in the websites, and that I will show you soon, these websites. And as I said before, common questions, it, it is also, it can be related to your hobbies, your types of books, which you read in your spare time, and so on. So for common question, you can be prepared, of course. We will have some website that can help you. And from my experience, I have 5B for interview that can help you to be prepared for your interview. The first one is be yourself. Of course, everyone have to show their inner feelings and their personality through the interview. So to show that, um, you have to be yourself. And the second one is be honest. Be honest in front of your admission officer, because they have to analyze you and they have to know about more about than just application that you sent before. The third one is be connected. As a typical interview, as a just a typical conversation with your friends. You try to be connected with your partner. So as in interview with university, you also have to be connected with your admission officer. Be yourself, as I said before, and be honest, and then you will have connection with your admission officer. And the third one uh, is be prepared. Uh, as you start your conversation with your admission officer, you firstly, before that, you have to be prepared for common question, as I said before, and specific questions, because it will help you um, to comprise your time and to show more than, as I said before, because you will have only 15 and 20 minutes. So you should be prepared. And the last one, be confident, um, just because it will help you also show more, and be confident because a lot of people are very stressful in front admission officer. They think that it will uh, be something that can uh, do not help to their application process, and they anxious about that, so they start to be stressed, and this can be, of course, big minus in front of your application. So just be confident that you are and you can show yourself uh, from different perspectives, and be honest, of course. Website for preparation. I prepared some websites that can help you to be prepared for your interview. The first one is Coach Interview Tips and Strategies. Uh, I can recommend you two good sites, good websites that can also help you not to learn about tips and strategies, but also about common questions and specific coach questions. But also you can find the answer for some questions in these websites. For example, why do coaches give interviews and what coaches require interviews, preparing for a coach interview, how to not sound like everyone else in your interview. And Coach Vine, it was from Coach Essay Guy. There you can also find some good tips for writing essays, and also about how to write your extra curricular activities and honors maybe. So the second one's Coach Vine. It also can help you understand about um, tips and strategies, but also you can find the answer for the question what to bring to a coach interview, which top coaches require interviews, 15 major coach interview questions to prepare for, top 10 tips for your coach interview. The second one is common questions. You can find them in Prep Scholar. I also use this website to find my common question that can help you to be prepared before your interview. And specific coach questions you can find in Quora or Reddit. This is like community. They share their experiences uh, with others, so you can find specific interview to the specific university, particular university. So you just read them, and you will be prepared, of course. And then my experience, the first of all, I had very stressful interview because uh, I didn't register um, for the early time, so the registration was full, so I couldn't register just a direct way because I had a problem with my stomach. So I have to write to the admission officer so I can register for interview. But the chance was low. But I thought that I have to do that because if I do not um, try, I will lose this interview and I will lose my opportunity. So I wrote this email. Due to my health issue, I could not take the admission interview. So can I have the opportunity to schedule it this week? And this I guess it was the right choice. So Mr. Davis took interview with me. So I guess this was um, my chance to show me in the interview. The second one is preparation, because this interview was in that day, so I had only 3 hours of preparation. I reread my application again, uh, tried to answer some common question on Prep Scholar and specific question on Reddit and Quora, like why Duke A. But uh, I already knew about this answer to this question, so I just remind myself and try to be more prepared. And also, I try to find some words that can match and that can work. So I try to be more myself. So it helped me a lot. The third one is prepare the interview place, like Zoom, outfit, and so on, and question to the university. Of course, this is one of the um, important ways to be also prepared for the interview. The third is interview questions. Where did I hear about Duke? What was my first impression? Which major did I choose? Why? Alternatives? How will I maintain my AGT organization at the college? Which things are the most important to the leader? This was these were the questions that um, which was in my interview. So uh, I answered this question, and I just showed them for you guys, because you have to know how it will look like, and just I guess it will reduce your anxiety. Question to the university. Uh, the first question that I ans- that I uh, yeah, the first question, it was, is it possible to work on research with association professor? It was very interesting, because I had a lot of questions about that, because I searched a UK website, and I found that a lot of robotics related um, research was with associated professors. So I thought that uh, will I have opportunity to work with them? So this question was important for me. Would I able to take their agreement to plant trees in green campus? Because I had IGT organization, I thought that, can I do my work as a leader of IGT organization and plant some trees in the green campus? Because it was also one of my passion. So I thought that it would be a good question. And the third, on the last one, would I be able to found a branch of my volunteering organization, AGT, and receive funds from the university? It also one of the questions that was very necessary for me, uh, is to found a branch of my volunteering organization, uh, because my friends from my organization thought that we can um, be bigger than we are today, and maybe found a branch in the in Chinese. So this was the opportunity for us to, uh, I guess, promote our organization. And the answer for interview question, uh, where did I hear about DKA? I said that I heard about from the session with Davis, with Russell Davis, and I guess this uh, made us more connected. And what was my first impression? I get I remember that I said my first impression was with Green Campus, and because I'm really interested in environment, this answer was uh, the first that came to my mind. And which major did I choose? I said that I chose applied mathematics and computational science, because it was my first choice. Then I guess I would choose data science. And for alternatives, I said that I took psychology because my mother and father are psychologists. So I guess this answer was too related to my family. And as I said before, I said that applied mathematics and computational science was my first major that I chose because it was related to my activities with robotics. So I said that this was very important for me uh, to be more close to my robotics passion, so I can then um, be more prepared for robotics job. How will I maintain my agility organization at the college? I said that I can work distantly, so this can help me to not only work with agility organization, but also study new things in the university, so I can combine every my passion, but not lose my organization. Which things are the most important to be a leader? Uh, I remember that I said it's to be connected with your team, because this is one of the um, important and necessary thing to be a leader, to know your teammates and how they act, how they interact with each other, but also know their um, advantages and disadvantages. But it also to fit with this company, with this teammates, you have to be also prepared with their characters, how they act, and so on. Um, I guess that's all from my part.
All
Uh,
right. Go ahead.
I guess we can go. Yes.
All right. So I'll let you, let me see if I can actually, no, it looks like you're going to have to switch the slides. So hello, everyone. And again, it is good to be here Friday evening. I feel like I spend a good amount of time with my friends in Kazakhstan and doing several presentations. And so just very excited to be here to do this joint presentation. When I heard that Temirlan was going to do a interview presentation, I thought, well, why don't we give the other side of the story and give the interviewer's perspective? I thought that would be an interesting idea. And Roshan, who many of you know, probably was agreed. And so I'm glad all of us agreed. And so I'm going to talk about several things. And I made some notes about what you just heard. And I have some comments related to some of those things. So maybe kind of the why do certain questions get asked? What was my goal of asking those questions that I asked? And but in addition to that, I thought it would be helpful for you to understand kind of the process. How do we get to the point of actually extending interviews? And then, obviously I represent DKU, but, there's a lot of different universities out there and not everybody has the same interview approach. So I will just go over what are universities kind of typically assessing. And then I'll talk more specifically about the DKU interview. Why do we interview? Why do we take the approach that we take, which is a very conversational approach? And the different questions. Why are we asking these types of questions? Is it okay to be nervous? Of course, we expect you to be nervous. So, we'll talk a little bit about that, hopefully allay your nervousness if you get into an interview. Again, kind of addressing that it's not conversational is not the approach a lot of universities take. I think most universities don't want you to feel intimidated or threatened, but based on feedback we get, and we get a lot of feedback about our interview at DKU and the approach we take, and to be frank, students often tell us it was the best interview experience they had. And that's my goal. That's my goal for my team. And then just kind of elaborating further on what your responsibilities are. And, I'll probably give a tip or two, just again, based on kind of what I just heard, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So if we can go ahead and move to the next slide, please. All right, so let's talk about how do we get to the point of extending those interviews. Once you hit submit, I'm a big fan of making sure, that you as an applicant, can get a glimpse behind the curtain, as I like to say, that you have an understanding of the process. And so the way, we operate and many universities operate is that, your application is going to get more than one review. And so for our purposes, we give 2 reviews. So the application will get read twice. We'll be doing credential reviews. Well, actually, even before we get to reviewing, we do something called a check for completion process, which means we're making sure we have all the materials in order to actually review the application. Because if we don't have all the recommendations, or if we're missing a school report, a key piece of material, we can't assess the application. So there's actually, and I know a lot of schools do this, there's what we call a bit of a grace period. So you may hit submit the day of the deadline. Then we're going to be going through that process called check for completion, making sure we have everything. And then if we're missing something, most often it's like a teacher recommendation, or in the days of test scores, we might be missing a test score. We'll reach out and let you know that we're missing something. Sorry. Oh my gosh, my computer is about to shut down for a brief moment to restart. Can you give me about, I'm so sorry, can you give me about 4 or 5 minutes? This is crazy.
I guess we can.
I'm getting a restart notice, so I'll log back in just a few minutes. Okay, I've got to restart my computer. Sorry about that.
Answer the questions while.
Yeah, take some questions. I'll be right back. All right,
guys, you can ask me questions. I can answer these questions. If you have some questions, of course. He'll write back after 5 minutes. Guys, I have some tips for you. So no, they do not interview people that already accepted. It is before acceptance letter, not acceptance letter. You have to take interview before the release of admission officers. So you have to take before that. It's like the part of your admission. So it's not like if you have an interview with the admission officer, it's not guarantee you acceptance. So it's just like the part of your application, like your test or your activities or your honors. As I said before, it takes no more than 15 or 20 minutes. So it depends, of course, but if you want to have more time, more minutes with your admission officer, I guess you can ask them. Maybe they will extend this your interview maybe for more than 25 minutes. I guess it's flexible. It's not just like obvious questions. Of course, it just they want to know you about you more from your face-to-face. So this can give them like other perspectives, so they can evaluate you from more than just that you wrote in your application. No, it is not necessary for every university. As Russell Davis said before, it depends on the university, but Duke they have interview, so it's just like optional. But if you want to show yourself from other perspectives, I guess that it is important for you, not for admission officer. interview is required step, right? No, it is not required for every university. But for example, I know Carnegie Mellon in Qatar, they have required interview with their citizens, but not for international students. For other universities, I don't know that they have such requirements like interview. Uh, every applicant take interview. Not every, because for example, Harvard have more than 50,000 applicants every year, so they can just take interview from every student. So I guess, as I said before, it is flexible for every university. Maybe if you have a chance and or you likely to have an interview if you are a strong candidate. And if not, does that mean that you're not accepted? Of course, if you didn't have interview, this not it doesn't mean that you didn't accept it or something else. As I said before, not every university have an interview. For example, I applied for Tufts University. They had interview, but unlikely I didn't, because um, they said that they like just um, they didn't have opportunity to take um, interview with me. Which question, Bauj, Baujik? Sorry, I, if you guys have questions, I can answer. So I want to wait. So okay. So they interviewed those people who those. No, as I said before, no. It differs for every university, as I said before again. But if you are already accepted, you also have a chance that you won't have a interview. But if you do not have interview, it doesn't mean that you won't be accepted. Uh, yeah, if you if you have interview with the university, you do not have guarantee that you do not 100% accepted. No, not so. Interview is a green flag for acceptance. No, uh, as I said, it doesn't guarantee that you are accepted. But it is your opportunity. It is your chance to show your application from different perspective. I have a friend who had an interview, but uh, then university said that he wasn't accepted. So it can be different. Sorry, one moment.
All right. So that is pretty much every presenter's worst nightmare, I would say. I'm so glad that you had another excellent host to keep you busy. So I didn't want to interrupt. If you were still answering questions, go ahead, or I can pick up where I kind of left off. What do you
Yes, I
prefer?
guess.
Okay. Can you go ahead? I'm sorry.
Russell Davis and
Yes.
Sana asked you a question about can
Okay.
you answer your questions
Sure.
after
What's
few hours, I guess, through email.
okay? I'm sorry. Do you want me to answer a question now or just keep going?
No, she asked the question that can he, she has a answer for the some questions after the session
Yeah,
through
yeah.
the
We'll
email.
yeah, we'll have time for some questions, and then if you have specific questions, I will share my email with everybody as well. So we'll make sure we cover both bases. So if you can go back one slide, please.
Oh, one moment. Yes, this one.
Yeah, let's go back to one more. Let's see. Yeah, that's perfect. All right. So what were we talking about? We were talking about the process. Every application gets a couple reads after we do the check for completion process. And that just means we have everything. You will actually get an email if we're missing something. And don't stress about it. All right. So this is in that spirit of hopefully, not getting too stressed out about the process. This happens. And we know sometimes that you are, you're relying on other people to get materials in. So we give you, a good amount of time to get those materials in, because frankly, it does take us a long time to read all the applications. So I know that we had some materials, that were coming in a couple weeks after the deadline, and that was okay. We will let you know once we've reached a point where we can't accept them anymore, but that's a pretty good amount of time. And really, you just reach out to the person who we're missing the material and just encourage them, nudge them along. But once we have all those materials, we're going to read the application. Each application will get a couple reads. Now, if we see that there's a pretty big difference in how the two readers reviewed that file, we'll even have a third reader read it. So we really do put the time and effort in to make sure that, we're accurately assessing and learning everything we can about you as an applicant. And so after that, the admissions committee comes together and we decide who are we going to be extending interviews. And we definitely, if we're a little uncertain about an applicant, we will definitely lean towards interviewing that applicant, because it certainly gives us an opportunity to get more information. Plus, from an admissions committee, we want to have the largest pool possible to choose from when we're trying to decide who we want to make offers. And again, I'm just telling you like it is. We also want to make sure we have a wait list, so, wait lists can become very valuable. Now, I guess I should actually say what our policy is. DKU's interview policy is we don't require an interview to be admitted. However, we do hope to interview just about everybody that we do admit. Now, in some circumstances, we have admitted folks without an interview, but our goal, and it could change, we could change to requiring it, being, our language is pretty strong right now. We strongly encourage you to interview if you are invited. And we may change that one day to, interviews are required. But right now, we essentially interviewed, the biggest pool possible to give us the most information about the applicants to help us make those final decisions on who we actually want to admit. So once we've come together and we've decided who we want to interview, that's when we send out our invitations to interview by email. Okay. And so, one of the things I always say, many universities do communicate to you by email. And so, I know that young people, your generation, in certain countries, certainly, I know in my two teenage daughters, they don't use email. A lot of people don't use email as much. You need to check your email. You need to make sure. And I've seen, it's very clear to me that some students, some applicants will actually set up an email just for all their college applications. But however you do it, make sure you understand how the university is going to communicate with you. And then whatever that means is, you make sure that you're checking it, because as you've learned, there's time frames, and when we put out our invitations to interview, we're going to tell you interview periods are taking place from this date to this date. and we want to get those interviews in. And while we do, as you learned, have a little bit of wiggle room, if somebody has a real situation that came up for whatever reason and they couldn't interview during that time, if we're able to, we will grant that interview. But if we get to a point where we've already come together as a committee and made decisions, and we try to do that as quickly as possible after all the interviews have been conducted, you might be out of luck on that. So checking your email, and just make sure that you mark the emails that are coming from universities so that they don't end up in your spam folder or your junk folder. Okay. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Okay. I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. Schools use systems where they can see if you've opened an email. So don't tell them that you didn't get the email, you didn't open the email, if you did open the email, because they can see that you opened the email. They have these systems called CRMs, and a lot of them use the same one system called Slate, so we can see. So be honest, always be honest. And just good advice for you. I don't think a lot of schools will tell you that, but it is the truth. And if you think you're going to have a problem scheduling, just communicate. Okay. We'd rather hear from you and hear what your situation is than be wondering. And I will also add one final thought is, and I think I may have had to do this with at least one Kazakh applicant. If I see that you haven't opened the email, I will try other means to get in touch with you. And so in Kazakhstan, I usually go to WhatsApp. And so I'll see if they have an account, and then I'll send a WhatsApp message just saying, hey, I'm Russell from DKU. Please check your email. So, and I know that I probably got 6 to 10 people that way who had not opened their email. And it was obvious to us that they hadn't. So, and if you are having a problem scheduling or you need to change, it's okay. Okay. Schools will accommodate it if possible. Some schools might not have the ability to accommodate it, but certainly if they do, I think in most cases, they're going to try to accommodate you. So the key again is just communicating. All right. If we can bump to the next slide there, please. So what are the different things that universities are assessing? And, not all universities are assessing the same things. But, typically the types of assessments that are being made are certainly, as a non-native English speaker, language skills, right? How is your English? And at DKU specifically, we don't require a TOEFL or an IELTS. We never have, even pre-COVID, because we interview. And so I can promise you, if you're a non-native English speaker and we did not get the chance to interview you because you didn't schedule it, that will be a serious problem for you. So definitely, as a non-native English speaker, if you're invited to interview, I even more strongly encourage you to interview, because that could be one of the things that they are really curious about in your case. So also communication abilities, and you're probably going, well, isn't communication the same as language skills? No. So language skills is really, do you understand what I'm saying? Do you have good listening? And listening is number one, most important. If you're looking at your TOEFL and you're looking at the 4 dimensions, the things we're going to look at first is listening comprehension, because if you can't hear and understand what's going on in class, that's a major problem. Speaking will improve in an English speaking environment. Your reading will improve with practice, and writing will continue to improve, but writing's probably the second one. But we're also getting good insight into that from your application itself, but listening is most important. So do you understand what I'm saying? And how's your speaking? So those are the things. That's what we mean by language skill. Communications is more like, can you have a good conversation, right? Can you overcome your nerves if you have them? We just want to just see that, and that's especially with DKU, are you somebody that I can sit down with and just have a nice conversation back and forth? And it also includes, the next two that are interpersonal skills and likability. I always say a smile goes such a long way. If you're really worried what expression to have on your face, a smile is always a good approach, especially in an international environment. So communication abilities is just the ability to have that conversation. And then interpersonal skills and likability, interpersonal is, are you somebody who has self-awareness? Have you been able to self-reflect? And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Interpersonal skills are, are you really, how do I describe IP interpersonal skills? It's kind of the softer skills. I guess communication is really the ultimate interpersonal skills. Are you somebody who's just comfortable and confident and able to engage with another human being, right? Likability is important. And I'll talk a little bit more about kind of, an AO, admissions officer interview versus an alumni interview, because an alumni interview, it's going to be even more important to likability because they're thinking about you as a potential member of their community, right? So they want to make sure they like you because you're ultimately potentially going to be wearing their same university brand, be an alumnus of their university. So just, are you a nice person? Do we like you? Do we want you in our community? Filling in the gaps, right? And so filling in the gaps is, we've read your application. Maybe we have a few questions. Maybe we want to confirm your language skills. Maybe we, have some questions a little bit about something that you talked about. Maybe sometimes we'll see an application that has so many amazing achievements in it. We're like, really? And so we may want to dive in a little further to that and say, God, did you really accomplish all these things? And so we may dig into that a little bit. So filling the gaps is basically just, that's giving us some additional insight that will round out your application. Because if you've ever heard me do an application presentation, your job is to hopefully, leave no questions for the admissions committee. But if you do leave some questions, then that gives them an opportunity the interview gives them an opportunity to go in and kind of learn a little bit more about you. And then interest and fit, right? Universities, they want to admit students who want to come. And this is especially important for not as much maybe the top tier universities, because they for the most part are like, if we admit this person, they're going to come, right? But I think when you get down maybe a little into the second and third tier of universities, which are still great universities, excuse me, but they know they're competing, they know that you're applying to a lot of universities. If they're looking at a couple applicants and one applicant has demonstrated much more interest, much more knowledge of the university, they're going to get more excited about that person. And, and again, just helping you understand how schools think, how enrollment offices think is, especially schools who are sensitive to rankings and are really trying to get up those rankings. One of the things that factors into many rankings is what they call admission rate, right? Schools want to admit as few students as possible so that they can have a lower admission rate and look more competitive and selective. All right. So again, just giving you the full story of why universities think the way they do. And so interest, especially for some universities, is going to be really important. And then fit. Now, fit is, you guys hear a lot about fit, and there's some universities that put a lot of value on that and some probably not as much. I can tell you at DKU, we put a lot of value on fit because we are such a unique learning community, learning culture, and our students just really like each other. They all have different passions and interests, but they're all like-minded in that they're looking for this very unique international experience. They are all got certain traits that they share. And so we want to make sure if we admit students that they're going to fit into our community. And so these are other things that, depending on the school, there's different things that they're going to be putting more emphasis on. And then when I say, are you the person in the application? I mean that kind of half joking. I mean, we are going to ask for an ID, so if you've done an interview with me, I need to see your ID, you hold it up. I actually take a picture of your ID and so we actually see that you are that person. But it's also just, can we ask you questions about your application? And can you tell us stories about you that are in sync with what we're seeing in the application? Okay. Because every now and then, we kind of feel a disconnect. We feel like there's just something doesn't feel right. And again, the more competitive the school, when an admissions committee has any types of concerns or questions or suspicions, it's a good reason for them not to worry about you and just put you in the other pile. So they just want to make sure that, the person that they're talking to, is in sync with the rest of the application. All right, so maybe we can bump to the next slide. All right. So why does DKU interview? So first, we are looking for very specific qualities. All right. And I'll go over those here in just a minute. But, this goes back to the fit factor. And so we ask a lot of different questions. We don't require specific questions. Every interviewer will have their own questions, their own go-to questions, and their own approach to interviewing. But our goal is the same, and that is to make it a nice conversation, for the student to be comfortable, get confident, and to be the person that they are. And so, so at DKU, we don't require specific questions to be asked. We just ask questions that will enable the interviewer to be able to assess the qualities we're looking for. And then ultimately, the interviewer will develop, like I said, their own questions, their own style, their go-to questions. And they've also been trained not to just, they ask a question, they check it off, it was answered. Then they go to their next question. Then they read the next question, hear the answer, check it off, go to the next question. My approach and the approach I work with my team on is to make it a conversation. And that means sometimes digging deeper. Tell me more about that. We talked about Temirlan's, tree planting organization. I was very curious about that. I wanted to know more about that. And so I asked more questions about that. And so, that makes sure that, it feels more like a conversation, but it also gives him a chance to demonstrate certain things. Like he's able to, obviously show me that this is something that really was important to him, that he's really given it some thought about what is he going to do with this organization when he leaves. It gives insight into leadership, which is something else we measure. For me, when somebody tells me they started an organization and they're really proud of an organization, I'm like, okay, well, what happens when you're gone and you're no longer there to run the organization? How have you prepared that organization to sustain after you? So it gives me, kind of what's going on here is I'm digging into a topic that he can easily talk about because it means something to him. But I'm also getting insight into what kind of leader is he? What has he done what steps has he taken? And so there's reasoning behind the questions and the digging deeper into the questions. But let me just kind of go back to why are we interviewing? So we're assessing those qualities. As I mentioned, language is important. And at DKU, we put a lot of emphasis on interest. We want students who have a sincere interest in DKU. And your interest is demonstrated and reflected by your knowledge, right? The more you know about DKU, we know that you've spent some time learning about us. And while that certainly doesn't guarantee you're going to accept an offer, but at least you're somebody who's put effort in and you have a good understanding of who we are. Another reason we interview, and again, I'm very candid about these things, is it's also an opportunity for us to tell you a little bit more about DKU. And so my team has been, trained. I've been training interviewers for a long time. And that is, when you bring up a feature, that, that you mentioned that is something that attracts you to DKU, I may ask you, why does it attract you? So that you can start thinking about why it actually benefits you. How do you benefit from it? And if I can elaborate further on how you might benefit from it based on what I know about you, I'm going to do that because I want to get you more excited about DKU. And so finally, we have fit. Again, super important for DKU. We're definitely going to be assessing what your fit is. So let me see, I have some notes here. Yeah, and so kind of the, digging into the, asking more questions, that's where I may go. You may tell me something that you enjoy, and I'll say, well, why do you enjoy doing that? I love to know inspiration for why you got involved in something. What did you learn as a result, maybe I might ask, or how did it change, kind of your perspective if it's that type of an engagement? Again, referring back to the common application presentation I often do, just like the application in the interview, you're going to tell me things that you do. In the application, you're going to tell me things you do. I call those the whats, right? I did this. I led this. I'm involved in this. Those are great. I get to learn a little bit about you, but I get to learn a lot more about you when I understand the why and the how behind the what. Why is it important to you? How did you get involved in it? And that also, it also lets me know that, yeah, this is something that really is important to you. And you didn't just put it on your resume as something that's, going to impress the admissions committee. So there's reasons why we ask these types of questions. All right, so if we can bump forward to the next slide, please. So ultimately, the questions asked are to allow the interviewer to be able to measure the key qualities we look for. And what I've put here are pretty much, you're going to see some of these on our website. I will also put a plug in right now. When we get to the fall, and for students who are applying to DKU, I also do several application advice sessions online, which means you can sign up and hear me talk for about 45 minutes to an hour. And I'm going to tell you what we look for in a great application, right? And I'm going to talk about these qualities, and I'm going to talk to you more detail why these qualities are important so that you can understand, not just the qualities we look for, but why they're important. And in that conversation, I'm going to tell you, this is our community and this is why these qualities are important to our community. So guess what? You're going to learn a lot more about our community, hopefully get you more excited about it. And then you're going to go off and work on your application and do the hard work, right? Put together the application that demonstrates that, hey, you are somebody who would be a great fit for our community. So none of these are going to probably surprise you. I don't know how much you guys know about DKU, but in 20 seconds, Duke Kunshan University is an international university located in China, just outside of Shanghai, and it was launched by Duke University in the United States. So it's what I call an international university located in China with a Western style approach to education, with a very innovative and modern curriculum, interdisciplinary in nature. So we're a pretty unique situation. Our students get to study in both China and the US, and they earn both degrees from Duke and Duke Kunshan. Just that's the final thing about DKU. So we're looking for some pretty important qualities, and obviously global outlook is the first one. This is a very international experience. We have students from all around the world, over 60 countries now represented at DKU, and growing every day. Temirlan, I'll tell you this right now, the number of students who are accepting their offers this year is extraordinary. This is going to be our biggest international class ever, by far. And so broadening the diversity. And so we want students who have a global outlook. They're curious about the world, right? They are interested but they're not abandoning their own country, right? They're interested in the role their country plays in the world and how it's connected to the world. And so a global outlook, very important. Curiosity. No surprise that one of the most popular organizations for our applicants is Model UN, right? We have so many students who participate in Model UN in high school, and it's one of our biggest clubs in college as well. Students, it's just a natural for us. Adventurous spirit. These are students who are, many of them, leaving their part of the world, going to a very far place. They're going to be studying in China, of all places. They'll get to go to the US in their junior year for a period. So, an adventurous spirit and really excited to explore. I mean, to explore the world, explore China, explore majors. It's just, explore everything. You're at that point in your life. And that's why we don't ask you to declare your major to DKU, right? You declare it at the end of your second year, so you can come in and explore all the different majors. Obviously, we want to understand, why are you interested in China? Why are you interested in this international learning environment? Maybe your case is more Asia focused. That's fine, but we want to understand that. A really important part of DKU, and this is kind of that like-mindedness, our students want to have an impact. We don't care how big of an impact. We just want you to care about something. And we don't care what you care about. We just want you to care about something, okay? With a desire to have that impact inside you. And then our driving principle is learning from each other, right? We're bringing you all in with such different perspectives and backgrounds and cultures. We want you to be engaged in our community, be eager to share your background and perspective, and be just as eager to learn from your classmates. Okay. And it's through that engagement, guess what? That and that means in the classroom and outside the classroom, even just having fun. Through that engagement, we know that this is how we're going to prepare you to be an impactful global citizen. We're looking for students. To be honest, you hear a lot about leadership, but teamwork is even more important, at least at this point in your life, right? We want to make sure that you're somebody who has the ability to work in a team and appreciates the value of working in a team, which includes learning from each other, valuing the different perspectives, being okay when somebody's better than you at something or stronger than you at something, because you can learn from that, right? Leadership potential is important, but you notice I put leadership potential. It means you don't have to have led everything you've been involved in. You don't have to be the best at everything you've been involved in. We just want to see that you get engaged, that you care, that you want to get involved. And that's why one of my go-to questions, and I do ask, there's a couple of questions that I do ask, kind of my front end question and my back end question. And I don't ask everybody this, because sometimes I'll get to it in other conversations, but I do like to ask, tell me about a leader you admire. What is it that you admire about them? I want to get some insight into what kind of leader you might be. And then a lot of times, if you've already, sometimes I won't ask that just because I've already seen that you've got leadership roles, and we might explore that earlier on in the interview. And so, again, assessing the level of interest, which is reflected in your knowledge of DKU's unique features, learning culture, and community. And it doesn't mean you need to bring forward and highlight every single thing about DKU, just the things that are most attractive to you, right? The things that excite you most, but I'm going to want to know why they excite you, right? That's going to be the why, not just tell me what first attracted you, which I know is an easy follow-up for me. And I can promise you, I'm probably going to go, why? Why does that excite you? Why are you interested in that? So many of the questions we ask will also get us to more than one of these qualities. So it's not like we're going to ask one question to get to each of these qualities. This is, my recruiters, my recruitment team, my interview team, they probably have 40 or 50 questions they can look at. But as I mentioned, they can also start to form their own questions, especially once they get comfortable interviewing, which most of our interviewers are. So many of the, we only have time. It's a short interview, right? It's, 20 minutes usually, max. And we can usually only ask 3 or 4 really good questions. And so we have to ask questions that will give us as much insight as possible across these different qualities. All right, so if we can move to the next slide, please. So why does DKU use this conversational approach to interview, which is not like all schools do? So one, it really reflects our community. We take a very personal approach to the application process. I've been in this business for 2 decades now, about almost 20 years, and I understand how stressful that this process is for applicants in the application process. Of course, once they get admitted, the tables are turned. Now they're in the driver's seat. But prior to that submit and getting that decision, we know this is a very stressful process. And so I've always taken great pride in making sure that we can demystify it as much as possible, be as transparent as possible, and this is a person-to-person process. This is a human process. It's not just data and all those things. And so my belief is it's a really good reflection, this conversational approach of who we are, and not just as an office, but as a community. Once you start to engage with students from DKU, you're going to go, wow, these students are kind of different, right? And so this style really kind of just reflects that. We also want to make sure that we can get the student relaxed, the applicant relaxed. It's so much easier to get to know them, to have a nice conversation if they're relaxed. And so by, the sooner we can get an applicant relaxed, the sooner that we can have a nice conversation. Now, I'm also going to tell you that, when I started doing interviews about 20 years ago, another reason that, I realized how important it is to get a student relaxed is when you get somebody relaxed, you really get to know the person. You're really starting to see the real person. Sometimes that's not great for the person. And so, that's something that we want to know. And so by really getting the applicant to just relax and have a conversation, not only, and in most cases, it's really to the applicant's advantage that we're getting to know the applicant and we really like them and all of that. But sometimes they let their guard down and they do something that makes you go, maybe this is somebody we don't want in our community. So there's also that additional byproduct of it. And so what if the candidate is very nervous? Will it hurt me as an applicant? Right. And the reality is, and I think I mentioned this at the beginning, we expect you to be nervous, so that's another reason why we want to get you to relax as quickly as possible, because we know that this is a very nerve-wracking situation, especially if you have technical issues or maybe you had a scheduling issue. We know. And so I'm always, I feel so badly when we have a technical issue because I know that a student, an applicant is already nervous and then they're having technical issues. And so I'm always like, it's okay. Right. So I guess the question is, the point is we expect you to be nervous. It's absolutely okay. And that's why the first questions tend to be really easy to answer. And that's why a pretty standard question for me is, so how did you first hear about DKU? Right? This should be a really easy question to answer. I think it usually is, I think 99 out of 100 times the applicant can easily answer it. They can think back. Sometimes they do have to think back. Or they'll say, oh, it was a presentation you did. Oh, I learned about it from the Duke application. I get that sometimes. Or I learned about it just Googling, whatever the case is. It's a nice, easy question, hopefully. Now, my follow-up, because I like to do a follow-up to it, is, okay, cool. So when you first learned about it, what was the first thing that attracted you? And so those kind of cover the first 2 questions that I asked Temirlan is, how did you learn about it? And what attracted you, right? These should be really easy questions to answer. And then, just most students, they get settled in pretty quickly. They try to relax. And even if you stay nervous, we're not going to hold it against you. Okay. We understand that some students are nervous, and that'll be the note that we make in our interview when we write it up. Candidate was really nervous, but they did fine, or I like them, or they had good answers, or those kinds of things, right? So, even if you stay nervous, or if you start off nervous, for the most part, I can definitely speak for DKU, we're not going to hold it against you. And I think most universities are similar in that way, that they understand that this is a nervous process and that you might be nervous. All right. So don't get too worried about that. And if you start off a little shaky, but you're able to get your feet under you, your legs under you, even better. All right. You were able to overcome it. All right. Now we can bump that slide forward. All right. So do most universities interview like this? Probably not. At least that's kind of what we hear. We've had a lot of applicants this year who, I know, and Temirlan, if you've been on some of the WhatsApp threads, I know that conversation came up quite frequently when they started comparing their interview experiences with different schools. And, we definitely see that we have a different approach, and our students appreciate it. Our applicants appreciate it. So we're not only achieving our goal of having a nice interview process, but it's being valued, and it's a reflection of our community. And we think that makes a little bit of a difference. So just talk about interviews in general. First of all, not all universities interview. And if universities do interview, they don't necessarily interview everybody, or they don't interview everybody they want to admit. Also, many universities don't just rely on admissions representatives. Sometimes they use alumni interviewers. Make sure I don't forget anything. Yep. So, as a result of this approach, I think I just touched on it. Our goal is to get them to like us a little bit more, right? That they're like, oh, this is a reflection of the community. I've already talked to the students. I feel that community. Now I'm talking to the enrollment office. I'm continuing to feel that there's something different about this community. And so again, all of these things are going to contribute to hopefully getting that student just a little bit more excited about DKU, so that when the tables are turned and now you're in the decision-making spot trying to decide whether or not you want to come, hopefully all these things we've done, if our community resonates with you, you're going to be excited about it, and you're going to want to be a part of it. So what is being assessed? These are some of the things that I listed earlier. Level of interest. Level of interest is going to be of importance to whether it's an admissions officer, maybe even a little more important for the admissions officer, but also the alumni. Alumni are admissions officers are looking at it from a yield perspective. Will they accept an offer? Is there a likelihood? Alumni are, hey, you want to join my community? You better want to join my community, So they're both looking at it similarly in that, they want to understand how much how much you want to be a part of the community, but maybe for slightly different reasons. English, that's pretty, if you're a non-native English speaker, both, I can promise you that's going to be something both are checking off and rating is your ability to speak in English. Now, I know, at least certainly from my experience, I worked at Duke for many, many years before DKU, and I had a lot of alumni interviewers that worked for me, basically did a lot of interviews for me. And I know that many of them felt more confident speaking in their native language and having the interview in their native language, but they were required to start every interview in English so that they could at least be able to assess initially the language. But then it was okay for them to move to their native language because it was just easier for them to get at the information and communicate, especially if they'd been out for a while and weren't using English on a regular basis. Their English may have been a little rusty as well. Now, filling the gaps, most alumni are not going to have access to your entire application. And so, that's more of an admissions officer thing, probably. They will have access to your application. They will review it to some extent. And then, they may ask some questions too, as I mentioned earlier, filling the gaps. And then fit and likability. I'm not sure all universities are going to, the admissions offices themselves are going to put as much emphasis on the fit factor. And I have some points about this in just a minute, so I'll recap this, then I'll talk about why. And then, but fit and likability are definitely important to alumni. They want to know, again, that you're somebody who's going to be wearing their brand potentially, being another Kazakh alum of their university in Kazakhstan, which might be a fairly small community. They want to make sure that you're going to be a great reflection of their community. So those are going to be important. But here's kind of my points I wrote down that I made about this. The reality is there are plenty of universities who don't interview, right? Or don't interview one. If they are interviewing a select few, they may be checking something very specific, right? If they're interviewing a fairly small number. So wanting to get it, maybe making sure language skills are there, or they have questions or doubts that they want to confirm one way or another. Some schools, especially those with large numbers of applications, so these are probably going to be more higher ranked schools, more competitive schools, obviously more applications, they simply have to rely more heavily on the application, okay? And if they interview a small group, it is likely because they are assessing something specific. But ultimately, the more applications a school receives, the more likely they're not going to be interviewing a lot, if at all, and they're going to be relying more heavily on data points, right? SAT scores, ACT scores, GPAs, those academic components, right? For those super competitive, super selective universities, they just can't give everybody the same amount of time, right? And so whether they say them or not, there's going to be thresholds, there's going to be minimums, there's going to be these things that help them focus on the more competitive pool. And, those elite schools with high rankings, they want to stay elite and high rankings. And the way they do that is be highly selective, very competitive, and have really high scores, high SATs, high ACTs, high everything, right? And so, again, just giving you a little bit of background, and I think Temirlan put this in earlier, we take a holistic approach, which means we are going to look at all of the application. We absolutely look at your academic side, okay? That's the quantitative side of the application. You do need to be a high achiever, but if your scores aren't super, super high, you can still put together a great application by having a really good qualitative side and really demonstrating your fit, interest, connection, all of those things. All right, so we can jump to the next slide. I think we're getting close to the end here, so we can open up to questions. So the applicant's responsibility, first of all, just make sure you understand all the university's interview policies. All right, make sure that if they're going to be interviewing during a certain time frame, that you're going to be available if you get invited. Just make sure you understand the policies, know the timeline. When will they send out invitations? How long do you have to interview? I think I already touched on this. Universities mostly communicate by email, so check your email. Make sure that they're not going into spam folders. Talked about reaching through alternative methods. We do that. I can't promise every school is going to do that. Take the extra steps to engage, to say, hey, we haven't heard from you. Did you know you've been invited to interview? But ultimately, it's still your responsibility. Be aware, receive, and act on the invitation. Okay. Be prepared. And I think Temirlan talked about this. Know your story, right? I tend to discourage, I actually do interview prep for MBA applicants. So another life. and there's a real tendency to want to memorize answers. I kind of discourage that, because what I see happen too often is when you've written down all these answers to questions and you've memorized all these answers, you tend to rely too heavily on that. And then when you get asked a question you don't know, which is what we're trying to do, we're trying to ask you questions that you don't know. And we know when you've been memorizing, we can tell, we do this. We're going to try to stump you. And a lot of times you do get stumped and you struggle because you didn't have a question, you didn't have the answer ready, or you have an answer ready to a question, but we don't ask the question exactly the way you memorize the answer. And so now you're answering the question that we didn't really ask. And so now we're going to ding you for listening. We're going to ding you because we're going to think you didn't understand the question, right? So got to be careful about memorizing too much. So just know your story, know who you are, review your application. Think about all the things you've done. This is just really, this is the advice I give when I'm prepping somebody for an interview. Think about all the achievements, the stories, the involvements that you've had, and think about, how did you get involved in that? Why do you enjoy doing it? Just know your story. The better you know your story, the easier it is to answer any potential question. Let's see. And like I said, I personally love to understand, the inspiration for your interests. How did you get interested in it? What have you learned? What skills have you developed along the way? So whether it's research you are doing, hobby you have, club you are involved in, or an academic strength, Olympiads you've been pursuing and been successful in, or just pursuing and not been successful, know the why and the how behind the what's, as I've talked about earlier. Dressing appropriately, always a good thing, right? Now we get, you are only teenagers, so we're not expecting you to dress up in a suit, but you should try to dress up, dress as if you were going out to a nice dinner, or, an important family gathering, look appropriate. But I'll also say that, I had the most memorable, and I'm not saying everyone needs to do this, but, a really memorable interview I had was with a young woman who was dressed in a Duke sweatshirt. That's, and when I said, oh my gosh, that's pretty amazing. She goes, well, all my friends know that this is my dream school. And so they bought me this. Wow, that's somebody who's done a really good job convincing me they have a really good interest, right? I'm not suggesting everybody go out and do that, but I'm just saying that was, that was memorable. And because we take pictures of everybody, with their ID, I asked her if I could share her picture with the rest of my colleagues. So anyways, that was an approach somebody took, which I thought was fun, but that's not a requirement. I just was sharing that in a fun way. So we tend to be forgiving when dressing, but just don't be too relaxed, right? Make sure you find a good internet connection. Try to avoid it. I mean, it's not going to bother us too much. Sometimes we adapt. We say, well, we'll turn the video off. Sometimes I've had to move to WhatsApp. We start on Zoom, but then we move to WhatsApp. But I know for you as an applicant, it's probably super stressful. Okay. And so my suggestion is try to get a good connection, the best possible connection you can get. Try to schedule it at a time that's reasonable. I did some interviews this year where, it was 2:00 in the morning and they didn't have to do that. But they, for whatever reason, it seemed like a little bit late to me. And then just try to relax, right? Again, have a nice conversation. Show up on time, be there on time, be ready to go. That's just a good lesson to have in life in general. And this is something that's becoming a lost art, but it does make a difference. Send a thank you note, right? Just send a short little email, saying, hey, thanks for the interview, really enjoyed it. Thanks for making it a nice conversation. These are the kind that I usually get. Maybe highlight, if you want to be a little bit higher level of sophistication, highlight something that you learned from the interview, right? And then maybe just a quick reiteration of why the university is the right university for you. right? Thank you notes are a great habit to get into, even if it's a quick and easy email. All right, last of my notes. So I think we're ready. I know it's been a little long, but apologize for the break we had earlier, but we're certainly open to questions. So I'm looking up here. Temirlan, did you see any that you wanted to answer right off the bat, or you want me to just kind of go through these?
I already answered these questions. I don't know, maybe they have some new questions.
All right. Oh, I see. Yeah.
Last question from Balzhik.
Is it good to fake nervousness for 2 to 3 minutes? So the question is it good to fake nervousness for 2 to 3 minutes at the beginning to meet expectations of interviewing people? Do candidate fake it? To be frank, I don't know how that's going to serve you well. I think just be who you are. I mean, the minute you start trying to, I guess the broader advice I'm going to give here is be authentic, be who you are, right? As soon as you start trying to be somebody you're not, as soon as you start trying to come up with answers that you think the person wants to know, that's hard to do. It's hard to be consistent. And, frankly, interviewers, especially admissions officers, we've been doing this a long time, right? And if we start to sense something seems a little off, it doesn't help you. So my advice, starting with everything you put in your application and definitely getting into the interview, just be who you are. It's so much easier. All right. What if I fail my interview? Well, fail is, it's a relative term. I'm not sure what you mean by fail. You mean what happens if you don't feel good about your interview? Because nobody's going to tell you when you leave the interview that you failed the interview. And I will also tell you that I've had many applicants in my experience, many applicants who thought they did poorly and they get admitted, whether they were interviewed by one of my alumni when I was working over at the business school at Duke for all those years, or even here at DKU. I know that I've had people who have come in years past who were admitted and ended up coming to DKU who said they thought they did terrible in the interview. All right. So I have a feeling we're a lot more forgiving than you think. So I really don't know what you mean by fail. That's a tough one.
Yeah. To be honest, I also had the thought that I just missed something, or that was very terrible, and maybe my language. So because I speak less than everyone thinks in English, so because I don't have a partner to speak, so I guess you have to just relax and think that, okay, I already did it, so let's see the results. And if you so just be relaxed. This is my, I guess, advice for you.
Yeah, that's great advice, and illustrates my point, right? I know it's human nature because I know I do it. I know just it's part of human nature that once you come out of a conversation, a meeting, or what have you, you're always thinking back on all your answers and going, oh, I wish I had said this, or oh, I can't believe I said that, or oh, I can't believe I forgot to say that, right? Well, first of all, we never know what you forgot to say. It's just like doing a presentation. If I forget to say something in a presentation, even though I may kick myself for it later, nobody knows that I forgot it because I didn't do it. So, the interview, I think, is very similar. You want to think back. I mean, sure, if you had more time, maybe there was an answer that could have been a little bit better, a little bit clear, or there was a point that was really important to you that you wish you'd had made, but you didn't. But in most cases, you do better than you think you did. Okay, I think that's kind of the general rule here. So this is a really good question. I mean, I can see, why it can be confusing at times. What exactly does fit mean? Well, and you're answering your own question. Fit to some certain qualities. Yeah. At DKU, we have all these qualities that I've already brought forward. We want to make sure that you reflect those qualities, right? And I'll use it in a very simple, it's so stepping out of DKU world where I live. There's universities have different cultures, right? There's some universities that are known for being very competitive, right? Students are all highly competitive, and it's a competitive culture. And then there's other communities that are much more collaborative, right? And I'll use Duke University, the big Duke at the US, which is also very similar to all our culture, where it's a very collaborative culture. If you're a very collaborative person, you're somebody who, you like to see other people succeed, right? When you see somebody do well, you kind of think, wow, that's great, and maybe I even played a role in that person doing well, right? That it's kind of we're all in this together culture. But if you're somebody who's a highly competitive person, that might not be the best fit for you. That might not be the best culture for you. And conversely, if you're a very collaborative person and you find yourself in a very competitive environment, you might not be very happy, right? And so I think that's a very basic but very real fit example. So making sure, and the best way, in my opinion, to get a real sense of fit and what the culture, and so culture is a really important part of this. There's other elements of fit too, like does it have the type of curriculum and majors and resources? Those factor into fit as well. But if we're talking culture fit, one of the best ways to get a sense of that is just connect with the student community. And a lot of schools are making it easier. Certainly a lot of schools like DKU put into effect different ways, more easy ways to connect with our community virtually in the last year because of the COVID situation, the pandemic. So, connecting with the student. That's why you can connect with our students through virtual campus visits where real person leads you around campus virtually, student. You can connect through our website directly with a student. And I always send the link to our DKU YouTube channel to prospects because there's so many student videos on there. And if you spend the time to look at those and connect with the community, and I encourage you to do this with all the universities you're serious about, you're going to get a really good feel for is it the right place for you? Would you feel like this is the right place? What are the most common personality traits? I mean, across universities, teamwork, leadership potential. The more competitive a university, the more emphasis they're going to put probably on the leadership aspect, likability, interest, a lot of the stuff that we already talked about. But what are the most common personality traits? I think just being a likable person, if we're talking about the interview, right? I mean, you want the person who's interviewing you to like you and want you to be a member of their community. So, it doesn't mean you can still be nervous, but you can still be likable, right? And as far as the achievements go, and I get this question a lot in Kazakhstan in particular, and some other cultures, is what if I haven't won the competition? What if I haven't been the best at it? Is there still value in it? And absolutely there's value in it. Okay. You don't have to be the best at everything. You don't have to have won the highest level of Olympiads. Okay. What we're going to be more interested in is, why are you interested in this? And just because you didn't win and you're not the best doesn't mean you still can't be passionate about it. You still can't be good at it, right? You still can bring it into our community as a passion and an interest. So there's really no one achievements we're looking for. We look for students who care about something. We look for students who have an interest and a passion for something. Don't care what it is. And another little secret, which I share a lot in my other presentations, is it's not about the quantity of the activities and achievements you're involved in. It's about the quality. And I don't mean quality in terms of being the best. I mean, just the longest and sincerest engagement in that activity. We'd rather see a shorter list of engagements and involvements with deeper involvement than a long list of just a lot of one-offs, okay? Things that you just do a little bit here and there.
Can I say?
Go ahead.
I heard a lot of people, a lot of students from Kazakhstan, they say a lot about volunteering, achievements. But as I heard, they do that just for university. So I think it won't play a good role in your application if you do that just for university. This you have to have fundament to make this decision to be a volunteer. If you are interested in maybe helping people in a nurse role, so you want to be a doctor in the future, it will be a good role in your application process. But if you won't be that person and you do this volunteering just for university, yeah, I guess it would be not a good decision. So try to find your passion in your way to achieve something. So I guess when I try to show my application, I try to include achievements that will play a good role in my application in front of my passions. So this my passion was robotics, so I try to compress only things that will help me to say that this is my passion and that I want to develop in the university. So in this way, I guess it is, as I said before, important to um, uh, only go in front of your passions. So that's
Yeah,
all I say.
great point. Because, what I do like to say is we like to see those key themes and threads. What are the things that are most important to you? And, focus on those things. If you have a specific interest in area, the more those are connected, obviously that lets us know, wow, this really is important. Robotics really is important. But going back to the volunteering piece, that's where, I may start to dig into some of those things. How'd you get involved in that? Tell me more about that. And so I might ask some questions that give me a little bit more insight into, is this something that's really important to you? Or is it just something that, maybe you just put on there, or maybe you did it one time, but you've listed you did it for a year, so we might probe a little bit further. But, just an application that is honest, authentic. There's a feel to it. This is not an exact science. There's a feel to it, and so we definitely get a sense when we're seeing something that's real. And so to Merlin's comment, when we see that his passion is threaded throughout in the types of activities and engagement that he has, that resonates with us, and that gets us even more excited because we can really see it's threaded throughout. Okay. Oh, holistic. Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So holistic basically means we look at all of the components of the application and they all contribute to the final evaluation. So, I talk about the two components, the quantitative side of the application, which is like test scores, GPA, some of those academic achievements, Olympiads, those may kind of factor in a little bit to that side of the application, because it lets us know, wow, this student's really good at physics, right? If that's what they've also had achievements in Olympiads. Then there's the qualitative side of the application. This is the essays. This is the recommendations. This is the insight we get from the student themselves, as well as maybe some others who are going to give us some insight. So the qualitative sides. The point is, we're going to look at both of these sides to make an overall assessment. So that's what holistic means. We look at the entire application and then we make our evaluation. Open and confident people are more likely to get accepted. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Personality likability might play a little bit of a role. We've already talked about that, but this is kind of that introvert versus extrovert a little bit. I'm going to make a parallel there. Some people feel like you have to be an extrovert to be successful, that you have to be an extrovert and somebody who can talk easily, and more confident more quickly to be successful. It's just not true. I mean, there's a lot of people who are very successful who are introverts, who maybe aren't always talking. There used to be a commercial in the United States, a whole series of commercials where, this one person, they spoke so little, but when they did speak, everybody listened, right? Because when they did speak, it was expected that they had something important to say. And so, I'm not convinced that you have to be, an extrovert or be the most open and confident person to get accepted. We're going to get to know you and what's important to you. As long as you can communicate that, you do have to be able to answer the questions. I think that's something we really haven't talked about. Sometimes I do have interviews with students who just can't answer the questions. And it's not because they don't understand the question. They just don't have answers. They don't have the ability to think on their feet. Maybe they are completely frozen with fear. I've probably seen that once or twice, although that's fairly uncommon, believe it or not. But I've definitely, I had a couple interviews this year where I went back and I read the notes. It's like, just couldn't answer any of the questions. And so, yeah, it's going to be a tough one to get over that. But as long as you can come up with an answer and take your time, if you need a moment to think, ask for it, right? Just say, oh, can I have a moment to think? That's actually a good thing. It tells us that you're really thinking. You're thinking on your feet. You're taking a moment. You didn't memorize the question or the answer. And so absolutely take a moment, ask for a moment to think before you launch into your answer. I know we're getting a little late here, so I'm just going through quickly. We already talked a little bit about the alumni and official interviewers. What kind of questions should not be asked in here? So my general rule of thumb for questions to be asking the interviewer, and this is going to sound really silly, ask questions that they can answer, right? Sometimes I will get a student who will ask me just a very complex question or a super detailed question into a specific course within a major. And the reality is that's not going to be in my wheelhouse. That's not going to be something that I'm super knowledgeable about. So, my rule of thumb with interviewers is, ask them things that you really think they can answer, but also things you really want to know, and ask them things that aren't easily on the website. Right. Those are some basic guidelines for when you're thinking about questions. I think a good question, and it's probably a little bit cliche, but you can always ask whether it's an alumni interviewer. And by the way, you can do homework on your interviewers too. If you learn who the interviewer is, do some homework, do some background research. If it's an alum, go to LinkedIn, find out where they work. What are they doing? You can always ask questions related to those kinds of things. How did university prepare you? What skills do you think, or experiences did you have at university that you have benefited the most from in what you do now, whether in work or outside of work? So you can ask questions, that are kind of general, but make sure that they can answer the question. I think that's the best rule of thumb. What if a candidate isn't leader, world changer, and so on, instead shy? Well, we talked about the introverted a little bit. Look, and I'll just give you one. I think we've got one last question. Okay, this is the last question, unless Temirlan wants to stay on further. But so I can't tell you how many times I would have applicants come up to me and say, I don't have any of this type of experience. I don't have any leadership experience. And we're not looking for you to be a world changer. All right, let's be clear on that. We just want you to care about something. Have something you care about. And I already said, we don't care what you care about, just something, right? Care about your family, care about one hobby, an activity, just care about something that means something to you. That's what we're really trying to get at. But the leader question makes me remember that, especially when I was working at the business school, I'd get applicants who would come up to me and say, I don't have any leadership experience at all. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk for 5 minutes. We would have a 5-minute conversation. I would dig a little bit. I would ask a few questions. And the next thing you know, we would come up with something that they led. Doesn't mean they had to be the leader, the president of the organization or the club, but they led something. It was just maybe a smaller component of it, right? But that's not my job with you. It's your job. Your job is to do the self-reflection. Your job is to ask yourself, think about, figure out who you are and what you care about and what you're going to bring to our community or what you're going to bring to the university community. And so, a self-reflection exercise that I give people, and I've shared it in other presentations here, is, think about all those things that you enjoy doing. Some of them can be just hobbies and activities. Some of them can be, maybe clubs, organizations, Olympiads, whatever it is. Just write down all those things you enjoy doing, reading, movies, whatever it is, all those things. And then write down, why do you enjoy doing it? How did you get involved doing it? Think about, was there any piece of my involvement in this where I actually led something? Maybe you just led a meeting, right? You led a day event. You helped coordinate something. But you have to that's the hard work, to be honest. That's the hardest work in this process, is to do your self-reflection, understand what you care about and why, what you've been involved in and why. And if you can do that work before you start the college application process, it's going to be really helpful to you. Now, this is actually getting into a whole other topic, which is, how do you put together a compelling common application? And I'm going to guess you can probably find links to some presentations I've already done with Education USA, because I know Rashan saves all those, but I'm sure I'll be doing another one probably this fall. But that's, you're now talking about the application process, and the interview is just the last part of the application process. Before you get to the interview, you should have done all of this self-reflection to figure out who you are, what you care about, and why, and then make and I know you may have a lot of different interests, and then just like Temirlan did, figure out, what do you care most about? What do you want to share most about? And then you just construct an application strategically that brings forward those things that you really want the committee to know about. So I think that's the last one. So Temirlan, I'll let you kind of wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you for everyone who came for this session. I guess thank you so much for everyone again. If it's all for today.
Yeah, I'm putting my email in here real quick in the chat box. So anybody who wants to follow up with a conversation or have any questions, there is my email, russell.davis@dukekunshan.edu.cn. I actually have 2 emails. Here's another one. They both go to the same place. This one's a little shorter and a little easier. You are welcome to email me. And like I said, I'll be having a lot of presentations in the fall. So I'm sure I'll have them for Education USA, where you are, but I'll also be doing a lot through our own website. So I'll just look forward to staying in touch. Thanks. And Temirlan, thanks so much for letting me join you on this presentation. I thought it would be really fun to see both sides of that interview. And it was really great to hear your perspective on that as well.
Thank you, you too. And also, I want to share my Gmail. If someone wants help, I can help them in application process, maybe give some advices from interviews or about some common up issues. So you can write me to this email, so I can help you. Then just contact me.
All right.
And of course, we will have a recording of this session. So Mrs. Roshan will send you, I guess, the link to this session. So thank you for coming. I guess it is the end of the session. So have a good day.
All right. Good night, everybody.
I can share with my Instagram if you want. This is the last one. So goodbye, everyone.